When the bullets ripped through her living room wall, Maria didn't scream. She prayed. In the middle of one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Chicago, a single black mother kneels on her worn-out floor, clutching her Bible as gunshots echo outside. Her two young sons huddle beside her, shaking, and she whispers the same words she's repeated for years. God, protect my boys. This isn't fiction. It's the true story of Maria Coleman, a woman who refused to surrender her soul to the streets, even when the streets tried to take her family from her. Maria was born on the south side of Chicago in the late 1980s, a time when poverty, drugs and gang violence weren't just problems. They were the air people breathed. Her mother worked double shifts at a hospital. Her father was never around. By 13, Maria had seen more funerals than birthdays, but she wasn't broken. She was bright, sharp, determined, and full of fire. She dreamed of being a nurse. She dreamed of leaving the neighborhood. But dreams don't always pay rent. When she turned 18, life hit her hard. Her first love, Derek, promised her a better life. But what he gave her instead was heartbreak and 2 children before her 23rd birthday. When he got arrested for armed robbery, Maria was left to raise her boys, Jeremiah and Caleb, alone. Bills stacked up. Lights went out. There were nights when she pretended she wasn't hungry so her kids could eat. Still, she kept her faith. Every Sunday, she'd drag her sons to church, whispering, "As long as we pray, we're still standing." The neighborhood's grip, but the streets had other plans. By 12, Jeremiah was already being pulled by gang recruiters. They saw a quiet, tall kid, the kind they could turn into muscle. Maria saw her baby boy. One night, she found a red bandana stuffed in his backpack. Her heart stopped. "Where did you get this?" she demanded. Jeremiah looked away. "They said it'll keep me safe." Maria grabbed the cloth, threw it into the fire pit behind the building, and said through tears, "That thing won't protect you. Only God will." But in her heart, she knew prayer alone might not be enough to fight the world closing in. Faith versus fear, every night. She'd work 2 jobs, cleaning offices after her diner shift, and come home to find her boys asleep in the same room, one lamp flickering beside their bed. She'd sit at the window, Bible open, watching the streetlights glow over cracked sidewalks and gang tags sprayed across every wall. She knew those symbols. She knew what they meant. Every color on those walls was a warning, a reminder that the wrong block, the wrong look, could cost a life. Still, she refused to move. She told herself, "If I run now, I'll be running forever." The spark that changed. Everything. One night, it all fell apart. Maria was closing up at the diner when her neighbor called. "Maria, you need to come home now." "The boys, there's been a shooting." Her world blurred. She dropped everything and ran the 5 blocks home, her lungs burning. Police lights painted the night red and blue. People screamed. A car was riddled with holes. And there, by the corner store, was Jeremiah, alive but trembling, his face streaked with tears. He wasn't hit, but his best friend, Trey, was. Trey didn't make it. That night, Maria held her son tighter than ever before. He sobbed into her chest. "I didn't mean to be there, Mama. I swear, I didn't mean to." "I know, baby." "I know," she whispered. "But this ends now." Something broke inside her. Not her faith, but her fear. A mother's war. The next morning, Maria didn't go to work. She went to the community center. She demanded help, programs, mentors, anything to keep kids off the street. They gave her paperwork and polite smiles. She didn't stop there. She went to schools, to pastors, to the city council. Every no only fueled her. Within months, she started her own youth outreach in her tiny apartment. She called it Project Second Chance. At first, it was just Jeremiah, Caleb, and 3 other boys. She'd feed them sandwiches, teach them homework, and talk about life. Real talk, not sermons. "Your past don't define you," she'd tell them. "Your next choice does." Slowly, word spread. By the end of that year, 10 kids were showing up after school, then 20, then 50. The threat, but not everyone liked what she was doing. The local gang saw her as a problem. Kids they could have owned were now choosing her over them. They sent warnings, whispers. Then one night a car rolled by and sprayed bullets across her building. Maria hit the floor, pulling Caleb down with her. Jeremiah was at the window. One bullet missed him by inches. That night she cried for hours. But the next morning she stood in church and said, "I'm not leaving. The devil doesn't get this block." Her voice shook, but her spirit didn't. Hope in the fire, a local journalist heard about her story. He came, took photos, and published an article titled, "Single Mother Builds Hope in the Heart of Chicago's War Zone." The story spread fast. Donations came. Volunteers joined. Soon, Project Second Chance had a real center, not a living room. Jeremiah started speaking to other teens, sharing how he nearly lost his life. Caleb grew up watching his mother become a local hero. And Maria? She still cleaned floors, still prayed every night. But now, her prayers weren't just for survival, they were for change. The setup ends years later, when Jeremiah graduated high school. The first in the family, he gave his mom a framed picture. It was a photo of their first night in the community center, handwritten underneath, "You saved us, Mama." Maria wept. Because she hadn't just saved her sons, she'd saved dozens of others. And though the world outside hadn't changed much, inside those walls, something had shifted. Faith had become a revolution. Maria's small project was growing faster than she could manage. Every afternoon, her living room filled with laughter, homework sheets, and the smell of peanut butter sandwiches. What started as a few kids now felt like half the neighborhood, but the bigger it got, the louder the street whispers became. Some people called her brave. Others said she was crazy for playing saint in a place that had already made its rules. The city turns a blind eye. She walked to City Hall every other week with her folder of petitions. She wanted an abandoned warehouse, turned into a safe center for the youth. Each time, a clerk gave her the same tired smile. "We'll look into it." Maria would leave with the same folder, and twice the resolve. "Then I'll do it myself," she muttered. By then, the kids had started calling her Mama C. She laughed at first, then embraced it. If she could be a mother to a community, she would. Jeremiah's crossroads, Jeremiah, now 16, was trying to walk the line between the world outside and the world his mother was building. Some of his old friends teased him, Mama's preacher boy. But when one of them was arrested for carjacking, Jeremiah stopped laughing back. He came home one night, face bruised, and said quietly, "Ma, I can't do this anymore." Maria dabbed the blood from his lip and said, "Then don't. Start again tomorrow." He nodded. That became their motto, "Start again tomorrow." A spark in the community, a retired teacher named Mr. Holloway joined the project. He brought books, boxes of them, and started tutoring kids after school. A few college volunteers came on weekends. They painted murals over the graffiti, fists unclenched, kids reading under sunlight. The words, "We still rise." Neighbors who once kept their doors locked began leaving water for the painters. The first mural unveiling drew dozens of people. For a single afternoon, the block felt like home again. The pushback change, however, never goes unchallenged. One evening, Maria returned from work to find the mural defaced. Red paint splattered across the wall like fresh wounds. Someone had sprayed, "Stay out!" She stood in front of it for a long time, the cold wind cutting through her thin jacket. A few kids gathered behind her, silent, waiting for her reaction. Finally, she smiled. "Guess that means they noticed," she said. Then she handed out brushes. "We paint again tomorrow." The next day, twice as many kids showed up to repaint it. The first breakthrough local news caught the story. A reporter interviewed Maria in front of the mural, asking, "What keeps you from giving up?" She answered simply, "Because giving up is how we lose twice." The clip aired that night. Donations poured in. A local church offered the use of their hall for free. For the first time, Project Second Chance had a roof big enough for everyone. Faith under fire, but blessings didn't stop hardship. Maria's body was wearing down. Long shifts, short meals, endless stress. One winter evening, she collapsed mid-sermon at church. Doctors said exhaustion. While she recovered, Jeremiah stepped up. He led the after-school meetings, told the boys stories of his mom working through tears, of how faith isn't about never falling, it's about getting up again. When Maria returned, she found a hall packed with kids reciting that same line. "We start again tomorrow." She wept quietly at the back. Small miracles. Months later, one of the toughest boys, Devon, came to her office. He'd been in and out of juvenile detention, eyes hard as glass. He said, "Miss Maria, I want to get my GED, but I can't read good." She smiled, handing him a notebook. "Then we'll start there." For weeks they sat together every night after closing, sounding out words. When he finally passed his test, he hugged her and cried. That hug became a photograph on the center wall. Devon, first graduate. It told every kid who walked in, second chances are real. Still, the tension outside brewed. The local gang lost recruits and money. Rumors spread that Maria was working with the police, a lie meant to scare her away. One night, a brick shattered the center's front window. She stood in the glass, heart racing. Then she knelt, picked up the brick, and placed it on her desk like a trophy. The next morning, a sign hung above it. "Every brick thrown at us will build our next wall." The kids loved it. It became their slogan. 2 years after that first kitchen meeting, Project Second Chance won a Community Impact Award. Maria stood on stage in a borrowed dress, the spotlight warm on her face. She looked down at the paper in her shaking hands, then at the crowd. "I didn't plan to lead anything," she said. "I just didn't want to lose my children." Turns out when a mother fights for her kids, she fights for everyone's. The hall erupted in applause. In the front row, Jeremiah and Caleb cheered the loudest. That night, Maria walked home under quiet streets. For the first time, the air didn't smell like fear. It smelled like rain and new paint. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Lord, you turned my living room into a lifeline. Thank you." She didn't know yet that her greatest test and triumph was still to come. But she walked on, head high, faith steady, ready to face whatever tomorrow held. The summer heat came early that year. Chicago felt restless. Sirens too frequent, tempers too short, and the hum of fear beneath every sound. But inside Project Second Chance, there was life. Kids laughed. Homework pages rustled. Music played softly from an old speaker. Maria watched them from the doorway, tired but proud. Then came the night that would test everything she had built. The warning it was late, almost midnight, when Jeremiah burst through the door, face pale. "Ma, they're saying some boys from Maple Block are coming for Devon," he said. Maria froze. Devon, the same boy who had just earned his GED, had refused to rejoin the gang that once claimed him. He had chosen work, school, and the center instead, and that made him a target. "They won't touch my kids," she said, voice shaking but firm. She grabbed her phone, called Devon's number. No answer. She prayed as she walked. Jeremiah followed, flashlight in hand. The street was nearly empty, the air heavy with the kind of silence that comes before thunder, the confrontation. They found Devon near the corner store, 3 boys circling him, shouting, their hands twitching inside hoodies. Maria didn't think. She just stepped between them. "Not tonight," she said. The tallest boy, maybe 17, smirked. "Lady, this ain't your business." "It is now." Her voice didn't rise, but it didn't shake either. "You don't get to take him." "Not after how hard he's fought to stand here." They hesitated. Everyone knew Mama C. Even the ones who hated what she stood for couldn't deny what she'd done. But one boy muttered, "He turned his back on us." Maria looked at Devon. "Then let me take the blame," she said softly. "He's just trying to live." The gang leader stared at her, torn between pride and guilt. After a tense pause, he spat on the ground. "Stay out of it, lady. Next time you won't be lucky." Then they left. The aftermath, Maria's knees buckled the moment they disappeared. Jeremiah caught her before she fell. They walked Devon home in silence. At his door, he whispered, "I ain't worth all that, Miss Maria." She smiled weakly. "You're worth more than you think." The breaking point. The next morning, she woke up to find graffiti sprayed across the center. No more second chances. The windows shattered again, supplies stolen, walls desecrated. The kids stood outside, eyes wide, hearts broken. Maria felt a storm rising in her chest. For the first time, she thought about quitting. She looked at the ruins of what she'd built and whispered, "Lord, I'm tired." Tears rolled down her face. Then a small hand tugged at her dress. It was Caleb. "Mama," he said softly, "if you give up, who's going to help them?" That question hit harder than any brick. That Sunday, she stood before the church congregation. Her voice was hoarse, but her eyes burned bright. "They tried to silence us," she said. "So let's make more noise." She called on the community, parents, teachers, elders, to rebuild what was destroyed. People showed up in dozens, then hundreds. Men who once avoided the block brought tools. Mothers brought food. Even the police sent volunteers to stand guard while repairs began. In 3 days, the walls stood taller than before. The kids painted a new mural, a phoenix rising from ash, with the words, "Faith rebuilt this." Local media returned. They called it the miracle on Maple Block. Maria didn't like that word, miracle. To her, it wasn't magic. It was work. It was pain. It was love. But the coverage drew attention from a local foundation. They offered funding for a real facility, counseling, education, job training. For the first time, Project Second Chance became more than survival. It became a movement. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Jeremiah was asked to speak. He stepped up to the microphone, hands shaking. "I used to think my mom was crazy," he said. People laughed. She fought battles none of us could see. But every time she got knocked down, she got up again. Not just for me, but for all of us. This building isn't her victory. It's proof that faith still works. He looked over at her, and I'm proud to be her son. Maria wiped a tear before it could fall. Months later, the crime rate around the block dropped. The kids who once feared police now joined community patrols. Local shops reopened. Maria never took credit. Whenever people praised her, she smiled and said, "It wasn't me. It was everyone who chose to believe again." One quiet evening, she sat by the window with her Bible, the city lights flickering outside. Jeremiah and Caleb were both asleep. She whispered, "You did it, Lord. You turned our pain into purpose." A soft knock came on her door. It was Devon, now in his work uniform. He handed her a small wooden plaque. It read, "For Mama C, you showed us what faith looks like." She smiled through her tears. The streets that once echoed with sirens now echoed with laughter. The war wasn't over, but the victory was real, and for the first time in years. Maria allowed herself to rest, not because the world was safe, but because she had helped make it safer. The center lights glowed late into the night again. But this time it wasn't from fear or chaos. It was joy. Laughter filled the hallways. The air smelled of paint and fresh-baked cornbread. Maria stood near the door, watching volunteers clean. Teens tutor younger kids, and parents gather like old friends. The place once built from scraps now stood tall, walls lined with photos. Murals of faces once lost, now found again. In the middle, framed in gold, hung the quote Maria loved most, "Where there is faith, fear cannot live." The ripple effect months passed. Word spread far beyond Maple Block. Churches, schools, even city leaders wanted to know how one woman stopped a gang war without picking up a weapon. Maria didn't preach. She told stories. She spoke of pain, perseverance, and the power of believing in one more tomorrow. One afternoon, a reporter asked her, "What made you think you could change anything?" She smiled gently. "Because someone once told me I couldn't." Devon's redemption. Devon returned often to the center. He became a mentor, helping young boys find work, teaching them to fix bikes, file resumes, and stay clean. One day, Maria found him painting the front wall. "You ever miss it?" she asked quietly. He didn't look up. "Every day," he said. "But then I think of that night, you standing between me and them, and I remember why I left." He turned to her, eyes steady. "You didn't just save me. Miss Maria, you made me believe I could be saved." She hugged him tight, whispering, "Now go do that for somebody else." Jeremiah's path. Jeremiah graduated with honors, the first in the family. His speech was short, simple, and pure. Maria. Mama taught me that being scared isn't weakness. Staying scared is. Afterward, he surprised her with an envelope, a college acceptance letter from Howard University. Maria cried openly, her son holding her tight. All those nights she prayed for him not to follow the wrong crowd. Every tear, every sleepless night, every whispered please. God had bloomed into this moment. By the next year, Project Second Chance opened 2 new branches, one run by Devon, the other by another mother Maria once helped. The idea spread like wildfire, not just a shelter, but a sanctuary where pain met purpose. National news picked up the story. A headline read, "Single mother turns tragedy into transformation. A city finds hope." But Maria didn't care for fame. She only wanted her people safe, her children free, her block alive again. The reunion one summer evening, there was a block party. Music, laughter, families grilling, kids dancing under string lights. Maria sat quietly in her lawn chair, a paper plate of ribs untouched. Jeremiah, now home for break, nudged her. "You did all this," she shook her head. "No, baby. We did this." He smiled, but she saw something in his eyes, gratitude and awe. As the music played, one of the young men from the old gang approached her. He looked nervous, holding something behind his back. "I came to say sorry," he murmured. "For the graffiti?" "For the threats. For everything." Maria studied his face, a boy now grown into a man, heavy with regret. "Son," she said softly, "the fact that you came here tonight is apology enough." He handed her a gift, a wooden cross carved by hand. "For faith," he said. She took it, tears shimmering in the glow of streetlights. "For faith," she repeated. Weeks later, Maria fell ill, exhaustion catching up after years of battles fought in silence. Doctors urged rest. Jeremiah returned home to care for her, lying in bed. She looked at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above her and whispered, "Lord, if this is my last chapter, thank you for letting me write it right." But she recovered slowly, and even from her bed, she planned new programs. "Pain don't stop purpose," she'd say, smiling through the weakness. Years passed. Jeremiah became a social worker. Devon, now a community leader, expanded the program across 3 states. Maria finally retired, gray streaks in her hair and wisdom in her smile. On her last day at the center, the community surprised her with a mural, a painting of her standing under a streetlight, holding hands with 2 children. Above her head, the words, "Faith built this city." She touched the wall gently. "This ain't my legacy," she whispered. "This is y'all's." The story ends the way it began, with Maria walking the same cracked streets of Maple Block. But now, there's no fear. Just the sound of kids playing, church bells ringing, and a city breathing peace. She stops by the mural, crosses herself and smiles. Her reflection glows in the sunset's light, older, softer, but stronger than ever. A car passes, blasting gospel music. She hums along, her eyes lifting to the sky, and as the wind brushes past, carrying laughter and life where gunfire once ruled, Maria whispers her final prayer. "Thank you for not letting me give up." A single mother's faith rebuilt a broken community. Her story reminds us that redemption doesn't come from miracles. It comes from refusing to stop believing, even when belief feels impossible.